Welcome, everybody, to the season finale. We finally made it to episode 14, and we got a pretty special banger of an episode for you here today. We got my boy, Dougie Fresh, Doug Cardoza.
Hey, how's it going?
Good, man. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. It's good to be on.
Yeah.
I'm looking forward to it. It's going to be fun.
Yeah, we're going to have a good time, man. I've been looking forward to this one. We talked about it early on when I was first just tossing this idea around. I think playing poker one night over there at Miggy's, but yeah, we're doing it. So
all kinds of crazy ideas happen when you're having a couple drinks and playing poker.
Yeah, I mean, who knows what's going to come up? I mean, especially you get a serial entrepreneur like yourself in there, you start throwing around other ideas, or hey, why don't you think about this or that? I'm like, well, shit, yeah, that's a good idea too.
Yeah, man.
Yeah, well, thanks for coming on, man. We're looking forward to it. So we're gonna just dive right in. Let's just get everybody kind of knowing who Doug is. I mean,
sure.
So basically, from what I understand and a little bit I know about you, you were born and raised in the Bay Area.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Yeah, so he's probably a 49ers fan, damn it. Another one of those.
The funny thing is, not a 49ers fan.
No?
No, but I'm a Warriors fan.
Okay.
For sure.
All right, I did see you at the Warriors game recently that I was supposed to be out with your kids.
Yeah, I was like...
Y'all were fresh out in the Warriors gear, hollering at stuff.
Way too much Warriors gear to be walking around downtown Dallas, I'll tell you that much. But, definitely a Warriors fan. Didn't really get into football until I came to Texas, right? You can't live in Texas and not like football.
Yeah, that's true.
You come here and then you adopt America's team.
That is true, although a lot of people will just jump right on and go straight for the Cowboys or, then they want to do the opposite. They got to go to your hometown and pick one of those teams. I figured you were going to go all Ryan Wester on me in here or something.
No, sir. No, sir.
And be chopping that stuff up. So tell people a little bit about your background. I mean, I don't even know where to start with you, man. You've done so much stuff. I guess maybe let's start off like you really got your calling and kind of found your niche, I think, originally in the music industry, right?
Yeah.
Because I know when I first met you, I was like, man, this dude is full of shit. I told Miggy the first time I met you, actually, it was before I knew Miggy, because you and I kept running into each other at Liquor King and stuff, and we lunches with the locals and stuff, and I was like, you tell these stories about, yeah, man, I was hanging with Naz and da-da-da-da-da, and I'm like, this dude is one of these $30,000 millionaires in Dallas telling me all this smoke, and Mickey's like, nah, man, he ain't for you. So then you start pulling out photos, and I'm like, damn, I have one other friend like that literally, I call him TMZ. That is his nickname because somebody dies or somebody gets in a scandal in the news, guarantee this dude has a picture of him with said person. I don't know how he does it all the time, but all the time.
Remind me to not hang out with him.
Yeah. You two probably know too many people.
I don't want to die. I don't want to be in the news. So.
Yeah. He's one of those dudes you just keep over here. You kind of know that he's always around those people. He'll pull up pictures of him with, you just name it. Pick a celebrity. I guarantee you I could text him right now. Whatever's hot on the news right now, and he'd send me back a picture of him with whoever it is.
Man.
Not photoshopped either.
Yeah, I believe it.
Yeah.
I believe it, man.
But yeah, tell everybody, I think you were telling us earlier a little bit about how you got into the music scene, so let's kind of maybe start there, scratch the surface there.
All right, it's a really weird roundabout story, and it might be a little long, so we'll pause here
and
there. But man, you remember, I grew up a diehard audio video nerd, right? I like to do photography. I like to edit video. I like to do all these different types of things, and I don't even know. I just took to all the audio video stuff. You remember the N1 mixtapes back in the day? You remember those?
Yeah.
Man, I was like...
I'm going to blow your mind when I tell you about N1.
Go ahead. Yeah? Okay. So
this might turn into the Dougie Fresh and Biz story here.
Yeah, you might have to change places with me.
Yeah, I might have to go over there and run the board. Y'all are really screwed.
I love it. Well, I remember my basketball team. We had one of the top-ranked teams in the state up when I lived in Northern California, and we'd like to try and make those A1 mixtapes ourselves. So we'd film ourselves doing crazy stuff, and I like to edit video and do all that. So I got really into the photography and videography, and growing up out in the Bay Area, it's hard not to be a fan of all the local hip hop artists, and they have a pretty deep rooted, underground hip hop culture with people like Too Short and E40 and all these artists. Well, when I was in high school, one day I got backstage at a Too Short concert. I just started snapping pics, all this stuff, taking a bunch of pictures, taking pictures on stage. All
now,
that.
did you bring like a legit camera? I mean, because you're about my age, so I mean, we weren't here with the little like disposable cameras or nothing, right? Like, you were rolling legit, right?
It was quasi legit because I didn't have the money to be legit, but it was respectable
enough that you knew what to do with it.
Enough that I knew what to do with it.
All right.
So I took these pictures, I edited them, and then I sent them to the concert promoter. It was a company called Family Productions in NorCal Underground. And I edited these pictures. I sent it to him. I said, I took these pics at your show. I thought you might want to have them for your website for whatever, great event. And they hit me back and they're like, wow, these are great pictures. Like, what if we got you backstage to meet all of these artists if you come do photography for us? I was like, yeah, I'm like a 17-year-old kid in high school. Like, I get to go hang out with celebrities and stuff.
Yeah.
Sure, right? And got backstage at a couple of these shows and just kept taking pictures. And next thing you know, like, you're seeing these guys more than once and you make connections with them. You start talking to them backstage. And I'm like this business-minded guy, and I'm always looking at something. Like, I remember there was a time where there was a local artist in the Bay Area named Selly Cell, and before I went and met him, I was like, I wonder if this guy's got a website. And I tried to search him online, no website. I meet him backstage. I was like, man, I know that you don't have, I was checking. I saw that you don't.
Like, what year is this for reference? Like, are we like late 90s?
This is like 2000.
All right. Yeah. That's what I thought.
2001, maybe.
Yeah.
But I go and I'm like, hey, man, I know that you got this good presence out there, but you got to be able to control your own brand too. Like, what do you mean? I'm like, if someone searches your name online, can you control the first thing that pops up, or is it going to be whatever someone else put about you? You're like, yeah, whatever someone. I'm like, you need your own website. You know someone that can do that? Man, I'll build you a website. Oh, it sounds expensive. How much does that cost? I was like, just record a verse, an unreleased verse, and give it to me, and we'll call it even. I'll do it for you. Okay. Then I'm backstage at the next show. I take this unreleased verse and I go to one of the artists and go, hey, how would you like to have Too Short on your album? How would you like to have so-and-so on your album? Oh, you can do that? Yeah, $2,500. I'll get you an unreleased verse, right? So then I'm reselling the verses that I'm getting from Balance of Trade by doing photography and album cover shoots and, all this stuff, right? So it just kind of blossomed from there. And where things really took off is when I started realizing you can make money off of the people that you know as a booking agent. Like, so at that point in time, it'd be, someone hits you up and they go, hey, I want to book Too Short for a concert. Like, oh, how much does it cost? And I'm like, all right, well, let me check. You call Too Short because now you've met them backstage at these concerts. You're like, man, I'll do it for $8,500 plus $1,000 for travel. And I call him back, like, Short said he'll do it for 12 G's. Right? And that was how I put myself through college, just booking agent stuff.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's really cool. I mean, I didn't take it to that extreme, but I mean, I met guys from, when I was taking guitar lessons to this, and then I started doing lights and sound with some of my buddies' bands, and same thing. Once you start getting in that circle and that network, now all of a sudden, they see you setting up and doing stuff and, helping out with all this stuff, and then this guy's sneaking over from the other bar down the street wanting to see what they're doing, and hey, how can we get them booked over here? They just sold out this bar tonight, and oh, okay, I can put you in touch with so-and-so. Yeah.
The world is crazy, and it doesn't matter what industry you're in. Like, there's ways to monetize the people the network that you have. It doesn't matter if you're working in technology, if you're working in media, if you're working in manufacturing.
Yeah.
So that was kind of what taught me to go get after it. Like, growing up in the San Francisco Bay Area, like, there's definitely a culture of, and people go, what's one word you'd use to describe yourself? I say grit. What's grit mean? I'm like, perseverance of effort without lack of enthusiasm. That's the biggest thing. Anyone can keep trying. Anyone can not give up. But can you not give up and give it the same effort and energy every single time that you keep going after it, right? That's the difference, right?
For sure. It definitely makes a difference on whether or not you're going to continue to grow and sell, for sure, because you got to have a little bit of all those things to be able to, and you have to believe in whatever it is you're selling,
For sure.
You know, so if you find something you're passionate about, which sounds like you did right out the gate, you know, music was just kind of a subculture that you were involved in that, you know, led to other businesses and developing you into the serial entrepreneur that I know you are today. So, I mean, you kind of go all over the place here, but so you get fully immersed in the music culture. How long did you do that for? I mean, you said you put yourself through college, so I mean, we got at least 4 or 5 years here.
It was definitely at least 4 or 5 years. College was a long go for me.
College was a long go? I didn't know that.
I took a couple little pauses,
sabbaticals and stuff in between.
It was hard to keep focused because it's like, I mean,
you're partying with
I'm in class one day and the next night I'm in Reno with Snoop Dogg. You know, it's like okay, like, and it's not just name dropping, but that was what it was. And then you go back to class and you're like, man, like, it's not the same. Yeah,
how do I focus after I just partied with Snoop Dogg and Too Short?
Yeah, you're trying to figure out how to, like, okay, well, how do you motivate yourself to get back at it? And, you know, eventually the music industry, I mean, I still love it, but it lost its luster a bit because, you know, technology kept changing the music industry. Just technological disruption over and over and over again. So if I look at just in the time that I was doing that, we're talking about being a booking agent and going, oh, okay, I can connect you with someone that you otherwise wouldn't have a connection to get. And, you know, there were times, even if I didn't know someone, I'm like, I know I can get a hold of anyone. Yeah. So, like, one of my good buddies back there in the Bay Area was a producer by the name of Mike Mosley, right? He was one of Tupac's original producers. He did stuff on, you know,
Digital Underground too,
he did the song Ain't Hard to Find on All Eyes on Me. He did E40's Sprinkle Me. He put out, you know, E40's Dusted and Disgusted, like all these big Bay Area hits, right? So he was a friend of mine. He knew everyone. So if I couldn't get in touch with someone, I'm like, man, I'll pay you $1,000 to introduce me to that person so I can book him for a show, right, or whatever. And he's like, sure, right? You know? Yeah. So, you know, like leveraging other friendships like that to get to people I didn't otherwise have. But with regards to the technology disruption, the biggest thing that changed things for booking agents, like people doing what I was doing, was MySpace. MySpace comes out, and now they don't need a middleman. They don't need to go to Doug to get a hold of Too Short or whoever. Like, I can send a message to this person's MySpace, and I'm dating myself talking about MySpace.
Yeah.
But you send a message to MySpace, you get directly in touch with the artist. You cut out the middleman. You reduce costs, right? You look at what happened with, like, Napster and LimeWire and all the download services, like all the other things I used to do, like video production, album cover design, all this stuff. Nobody wanted to spend money for it anymore. They're like, I'll get some other kid who just wants to be able to be in the scene and say he did something, and he'll do it for free, right? So, you know, because they're making less money on the creative side of the scene.
Yeah.
I know you can feel it. I know he's like preach.
Plus MTV, you know, I mean, MTV doing what they did, you know, and then the videos start dying out, and like now all of a sudden videos, like, not
listening to a mirror.
Does it sound like I'm telling your story?
Oh my God, yeah, right? Bruh. When I say we gonna have a conversation after today's episode, you ain't getting out of here without that, man.
Yeah, I didn't even tell Biz what you did before you got in here, because I was like, man, I already know where this is gonna go. You two are gonna be talking for hours.
Yeah, so it's a trip. Like, I just saw technology disruption over and over and over again change things. I went to the creative side, to the distribution side. I got a job at Universal Music Group in Burbank, California, and was trying to do that, like the artist development side, for a little bit. And I saw the entire Latin division get laid off when I was there. And they went from having 12 offices around the country to 4, right? Like, you know, you're talking major consolidation within this industry. And it's like, if you can't beat them, join them, right? So after all of the time that I kept beating my head against the wall in the music industry with grit, like without loss of enthusiasm, right?
Yeah.
Same thing. I said, you know what if I got into tech? And I ended up going, I'm going to make a push now to get into the technology industry. And I actually leveraged my background doing the, you know, media editing, like audio and video encoding and transcoding files into different formats, and just understanding how video works. And at the time, one of the world's largest tech companies, Cisco Systems, right? Huge company, was coming out with this new product called telepresence, right? High-end video conferencing, like extremely immersive video conferencing systems, where these rooms for video conferencing, it was like $300,000 for one video system.
Yeah.
Right? And they wanted people who knew how video works and stuff. So I actually ended up transcending in my background, and even though it was music, but it was because of all the video editing and the multimedia stuff that it resonated on their radar, where I got a job to go work in what they called their emerging technologies group. That was any product that they had that hadn't yet done $1 billion in revenue, went into an incubator business unit.
Okay.
And that was my transition. It was like things like digital signage, right? Like the menu boards and things you'd see.
So you saw what was pushing you out and went towards it instead of like trying to reinvent the wheel or anything else. You went after what was causing
the change.
Yeah. That's awesome, man. That's really cool. A lot of people don't have the fortitude or the thought process to do that. I think a lot of people miss out on where you saw that as an opportunity, because that's where you started.
Yeah.
And that's what you took advantage of, with your relationships. And then when that changed, you had to kind of reinvent that a little bit. So then you jump over to Cisco.
Yeah.
Like that's not some like bullshit job either.
No. Well, the first one was a little rough. First job. So at the time I was living in San Jose, California, and I was still doing the video stuff. I worked at a nightclub called Wet Nightclub in downtown San Jose, and we'd go and interview like Kim Kardashian when she came to the club, or Lil Jon or whoever, right? People that were coming in and out of the club, and I'd basically go film, from 10 o'clock to 2 o'clock in the morning, make a 2-minute video recap of the evening and post it to the club's website, right? So I was working there Friday and Saturday nights. I was selling Harley Davidson motorcycles on Sunday. And then I got a job at Cisco working from 2 a.m. to 11 a.m. in the morning, supporting customers in Europe, doing technical presentations about the video conferencing technology. So I was working three jobs. My wife was working 2 at the time. She worked at
This is definitely pre-kids.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah, and that's how we ended up in Texas. I got an opportunity for a permanent gig at Cisco where I'd have regular hours, and I got relocated to Texas. So that's how I'm.
How long ago was that?
2010.
Wow, 12 years here now. You've been here a little minute.
Yeah, so I pretend to be Texan real good.
Yeah, you and me both, man. I mean, I moved here in 96, and it's the longest I've lived in one place, so I can totally relate to that.
Where are you originally from again?
Oklahoma originally, but I moved every 3 years growing up. So like my last stop before here was Connecticut. So
okay.
I did the East Coast thing while you were over on the West Coast. So I did the same thing, getting to go into New York when we weren't supposed to. Once we got that driver's license, man, I mean, it wasn't much to get over that way and go run around. And, I still to this day, one of the prized possessions I had. So I was a Biggie fan.
Oh, I mean, perfect. I'm just teasing.
No. I knew we were going to get to this. You and I got into this a little bit poker night. But Biggie, when he was first coming out, man, I mean, you could just walk down the street in like 95-ish, and, Big and Puff would be chilling. Like, it wasn't like they were blowing up, but he was still handing out mixtapes and shit outside of bars and clubs. And I'm 15, 16 years old. And I remember I got a dual tape, two mixtapes that I got off of them.
I hope you still have them.
Dude. So I moved to Texas, and while I'm working at Tom Thumb, my car gets broken into, and I had probably 4 of those mega CD binders laid out on the back seat, but like it was all black, so I guess they just didn't see them. They ripped all my speakers out, and they took my deck, which had those 2 tapes in it.
Man, you could twist that story.
Man.
It'd be embellishing a little bit, but what if it was like Biggie was discovered because the person who stole your car stereo stole the demo?
That was like 96, so he's bigger by then. So, there's no... Yeah, but that was one of those things. Cause my best friend's older sister, she dated all these older guys, so she would take us down to New York. We'd go to these clubs and stuff and get to hang out and meet these different people. So like, yeah, man, it was pretty wild. Like, but yeah, that's one of those that I would pay to have those 2 cassette tapes back. Cause I mean, that was just raw, like,
Oh yeah.
stuff he put out. Like, I mean, you've probably had several of those tapes handed to you. So like
Yeah.
you can't experience in any other way, especially back then. That's how they did it.
One that was a trip for me, like looking back at it, and it's not my genre per se, but when I was at Universal Music Group, I remember coming across Lady Gaga's electronic press kit when she was shopping for her deal, right?
Yeah.
And I still have a copy of that actually. So like her
Nice.
original electronic press kit, but it's just funny because like I didn't know she was going to blow up like that.
Yeah, nobody did. I mean, so many people are like that like don't start off that way, but end up, getting pretty huge really quick.
Yeah, absolutely. But coming to Texas was a blessing.
Yeah.
It was a blessing. It was life-changing for me and my family for sure.
Who does not say that? I think every episode we have this discussion or that said. For those that live outside of Texas or have this thing about Texas, it's its own country. I'll admit that. But the mindset, the whole way this place moves, the networking, all that, you can't deny it.
It's just such a big hub, man. I mean, you have walks of life from all over the U.S., and it's more and more constantly because everybody starts realizing the benefits of what's going on in Texas and the growth and everything else. And you're so centralized that you get all these people from both coasts, and the collaboration and everything else. Just it's impressive.
Well, if you're like me and you're growing up in California, like you're trying to convince yourself, you're like, surely there's a reason. Like you grew up. I'm not gonna lie. I thought I grew up in the center of the universe. Growing up in California, it's like, oh, why would anyone live anywhere else? And then you go somewhere else, you're like, oh, there's a lot more to life than palm trees and sunshine, right? Like,
Yeah.
And then don't get me wrong, I love the beach and I love palm trees, I love sunshine, and the weather and all that stuff. But I love the fact that my kids can go to a public school that's the equivalent of a private school back home. Like I love the fact that, if I take a job, it's not because I have to, it's because I choose to, right? Growing up out there, I kind of felt like everything I'd have to do, if you're chasing a promotion, it's like, well, hey, maybe if I do this, then each of my kids can have their own room someday, right? Like, I didn't even have kids when I left there, but you get what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Everything's like, okay, if I do this, then this happens. Whereas out here, it's like, if I take this thing, it's because it's for me and I want to, not because I feel like I have to. And I'm not saying that's the situation for everyone, because everyone's got their own struggles and stuff too. But I do feel the opportunity out here is much more available for people to create a good life for their family. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and you don't have to have some celebrity status or this and that to get yourself in a room or a place that you would in a lot of other states.
Right.
New York. You ain't just walking into a lot of these places. California, same thing. Like, you got to know somebody.
Oh, yeah.
Or you got to find a way to get in. Like, it's not Dallas. I mean, they have those places, but like overall, you don't have to work as hard to put yourself in an environment that can be conducive of those opportunities.
But the one thing I'll give Cali though is like, it taught me that thing I keep talking about, I keep going back to, and like, man, Doug talks about grit a lot, but it taught me how to just persevere and never give up and never lack the enthusiasm to keep getting after it, right? Because you kind of have to, right? And pressure makes diamonds. I was kind of forced into a bit of a corner, I feel like. When you're working graveyard hours and then 2 other jobs, and then my girlfriend at the time, who's now my wife, was working 2 jobs, and we barely got to see each other. It's like, okay, something's got to give.
Yeah.
And you're like, I'll do kind of whatever it takes. The opportunity to move to Texas, I got a call, and they're like, well, if you want this job, it's yours. You have 2 weeks to move to Richardson. I'm like, where's Richardson? They're like, Dallas. I'm like, oh, why didn't you just say Dallas? Because I didn't even know what Richardson was, right? I was like, okay. And I remember packing up my Chevy Trailblazer with everything I owned and just driving across the country to a place I'd never been. I'd never been to Texas in my life. Put a deposit on an apartment I'd never seen, and just rolled the dice. But you
If that's not the story of, that's crazy, man. When we moved here, we had to put a deposit down on a house for rental that we couldn't move to for 3 months. I paid rent for 3 months before we even moved here because it was the only thing available. And the dude wasn't going to hold it. I had a job, but it didn't start till November. This is August. So I paid rent on that house until we can get down here, moved here, lived in Frisco, but I worked in Garland. 2-hour commute every day. It didn't matter. But your mindset is you'll do whatever it takes.
Whatever it takes.
Because it's a land of opportunity.
Absolutely.
And haven't looked back.
That's 100% it. I remember being on the phone calling this apartment complex asking if they had air conditioning. And they laughed at me, right? They laughed at me. They're like, this is Texas. Like, I don't know. My mom's house to this day, my mom lives in a city called Petaluma, California. Still doesn't have air conditioning. I'm like, the houses, we didn't have air conditioning. And granted, I think it was easier back then to get away with that than now because, like my dad's house was a different story than my mom, but my parents were separated, lived a couple hours apart, so it was a little different circumstance. But, the whole notion of, do you have air conditioning or not, and all these things things that people take for granted, right? Because now it's hot as hell out there. It's hot, like the climate change.
Yeah, my little brother lived in Santa Cruz for a while, and like he didn't have AC, and I'm like, dude, what? And he's like, yeah, you want to book this one hotel and you come visit me because it's the only one that has AC.
But I got one ceiling fan in my 3-bedroom house.
Yeah, right.
That's what it was like,
Yeah, I got a window unit.
Yeah, I got a window.
We plug it in every once in a while when the neighbors won't make fun of us.
Yeah, or when they won't complain about the noise.
Yeah. Right? Exactly. Or it's destroying the ozone or chemtrails or whatever they come up with out there.
Yeah, exactly. But no, it's funny. So definitely a lot to be said about being in Texas.
Oh, it sounds like you're really keen at like watching for those moments and those opportunities, and you haven't let many of them pass you by. It doesn't sound like you've always explored it and taken that opportunity as maybe it was not what you thought at the time or the lesson you thought you were learning, but you were able to gain something from it or transition it into something.
Yeah, I'm trying to. I definitely feel like I do, but like no one does it on their own, and it takes other people to help them get where they're trying to go. Like my in-laws now, I'd say they're a big contributor to that too, because like my wife is half Mexican, half Armenian. 100% fire, by the way. Like, you don't mess with them. But, but half Mexican, half Armenian, and you're like...
No, I'm looking at him. Sounds familiar, don't it?
Yeah. No, he's already transitioned to this because I was going to drop this in a minute. But, I feel like I hit a home run with my in-laws. My in-laws are awesome.
I love
I love mine to death. I was going to introduce you, but we didn't end up crossing paths again when we were up at Choctaw the other week.
You bumped into my father-in-law there.
I bumped into your father-in-law several times, and I'm telling you, short of my father-in-law, this cat's got one cool-ass father-in-law, man. I could sit around with his father-in-law and talk to this man all damn day, and there ain't going to be a dull moment.
No.
And not a silent moment either.
No.
You can rap with him for hours. He is so intriguing and interesting.
Yeah,
he's just a good human being.
He is, and he's the life of a party. But I was nervous because before we moved to Texas, I asked his permission. I was like, hey, here's the deal. I'm like, I want to do these things. Oh, I see my boy Tim popping. What are you doing here?
Oh, we got special deliveries in the house, y'all.
Like a thief in the night.
Hey, it's my boy Tim.
Hey, hop on in here real quick. Y'all, we've talked about Tim before.
Hey, you see?
All right.
Oh, look at he's wearing the hat.
Yeah, he's even wearing the hat.
Hey, I dropped off a Sherry Christmas and a very Sherry Christmas up front, so make sure you try that.
Oh, I appreciate you, my man.
Thank you very much.
Yes, sir.
Merry Christmas.
Thank you. Merry Christmas. Thanks, Tim.
We'll drop in real quick here and just say, hand me one of those. Let me show this up here.
That's my guy right there.
So, Tim, we've talked about this when our good friend Miguel was on here. He has the blendery. If you guys haven't checked this out, go check it out. It's a great experience. You can blend and bottle your own stuff.
Let me talk about this one while we're at it, because this is cool. So my second grade son, first year of tackle football, which is great, like tackle football, Texas, second grade.
Yep.
They went undefeated. They got to play at Allen Eagle Stadium, the high school stadium, which, for anyone that doesn't know, it's a $60 million.
Yeah, it's like a college facility.
High school stadium.
It's a high school stadium.
So they play their championship game there. Their team's called the Wildcats.
Yeah.
Right? So what I use the Blendery for and go to Tim's place all the time, it's always to commemorate something because I think that's the unique thing you can only do there. So I said, I went to him, I said, hey, I want to make a blend for my son's football team and to give them to the coaches and to give them to, the different people. So that's why it's got the purple and black wax to commemorate the Wildcats colors. And it's also blended down to 8-year average, right? So the kids are all 8 years old. So I was able to take whiskey of different ages, blend it down to 8 years. But the Blendery is an awesome way to commemorate things that are important to you. I do it all the time. I'm about to, speaking of father-in-law, we'll go back to that.
Yeah.
In the next week or two, me and him are doing a father and son blend there. So we're going to go to so if you want to go, bring your father-in-law. Is he local?
Yeah,
is he local?
Yeah.
All right. We're going to go. We're going to take our father-in-laws. We're going to do a father-son blend. And But, so the Blendery is awesome. You can go there, make your own, blend of multiple different whiskeys. They got a social area to hang out. They got...
they got lockers. It is legit. Like, if any of you have ever been to a distillery and you see like the Rick House tasting room where they'll bring barrels out and you can taste the different barrels, that maybe you're doing a single barrel select or something like that. He's kind of created that in almost a cigar lounge's atmosphere, where he has the bar, he has blends that they've done that others like Doug has done. We've had a couple of the blends some of the groups have done on here that you guys have all seen. But yeah, like Doug said, you can commemorate stuff. But even if you just want to go and you think you know a lot about bourbon, like you can go put that to the test and he'll pull out barrels and you can start blending away. And if you create something good enough, you can bottle it. They might even decide to bottle it. I mean, I've watched him do that with people too before, where they pulled something out that was so amazing that and then you have like the Killer Bee that the guys did, and that ends up winning gold awards.
Yeah, so the Killer Bee won the gold medal at the New York Spirits competition, which was something that the locals whiskey club picked out, right? Miguel and Blake and those guys, right? So, I mean, I can't speak highly enough, but the other thing too is if you think about it, it's also rooted in a lot of positive things. He takes proceeds that come from the Blendery and donates them back to charity and all kinds of things. So,
And congrats to Tim and his wife. They just had a little baby here recently too. So throwing a little shout out to Tim. They're good people.
Yeah, I can't say enough good stuff about him. But back to the father-in-law thing, which kind of ties into that father and son blend. So I was asking him. I said, hey, I'm not going to move unless you give me your daughter's permission, or your permission for your daughter to move with me, right? Because that was important to me. And in the Mexican culture and the Armenian culture especially, even more so the Armenian culture, you don't try and relocate someone without there being a ring on the finger. I just made it very clear. I said, hey, here's the thing. Here's my intentions for your daughter. But I'm not in the position to do the right thing right away, right? In terms of financially buy the ring and all these other things. And they were very supportive and encouraging me to pursue this opportunity and for her to go with me. And she ended up creating a good career for herself as well. And it all went really well. But the gist of it was that what it really all comes back to is what we talked about, like, yes, I seized the opportunity when the opportunity presented itself, but other people could have hindered that if I didn't have the right people around me.
Yeah.
Right? So I had the right people around me, and that's why it worked out. Otherwise, it might not have,
Yeah. I mean, there's a thing to having good luck and fortune as well, too. You got to have a little bit of that, too, even if you're doing all the right things. No, I mean, I can totally relate to that. My wife's half Jordanian, so I mean, I fully get what you're saying here. I mean, like, I think that's part of the reason why too. When I met your father-in-law, like, we hit it off so well too, just talking and shooting the shit. Like, I mean, he is one cool cat, man. Like, you did well there in that family.
that poor bastard already broke the mold, is what I'll say. So my wife's family, being Armenian, right? Like, a lot of people don't even understand this, but the Armenians suffered a huge genocide, right?
Yeah.
People don't even realize that happened by the Ottoman Empire, the Turkish Empire, right? Just killed millions and millions of Armenians. And right now, the reason why Armenians are so tight-knit, it's about the preservation of their culture. There's just not that many around anymore, right? So it's very much like they're raised being taught, like, you go find a nice Armenian boy and you marry him and you make a bunch of Armenian kids and you boom, 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 boom. My father-in-law broke that mold. Otherwise, me and my wife wouldn't have happened.
Right.
You know? Yeah, being Mexican, and she's 100% Armenian. So, you know,
Yeah, no, it takes some of that. I mean, at times, like, and there's shockingly, it's shocking, but there's a huge Armenian culture here in Dallas. I mean, I went to school with a whole bunch of Armenians that
there's
in the colony and stuff. I mean, I know you guys know all these guys.
A lot are moving to Salina right now. I don't know what it is.
Yeah. Everybody's moving to Texas. I mean, we need to quit talking about it so much. You know, keep this under wraps for a little while. So we got back to, you jumped on over at Cisco, took your job here. I think you were there for 8-10 years with Cisco.
Yeah, about 9 or 10 years, and worked out really well. Was in a lot of different roles, everything from systems engineering to like product specialist roles, moved into sales, went into leadership, you know, got a lot of exposure to a lot of people. And ultimately left that organization to pursue a couple opportunities. And, you know, going back to the pressure makes diamonds situation, right? If I look at it in
Hindsight?
Yeah, if I look at it in hindsight, every time in my career, I always continued to push for that, right? So, for example, when I was in engineering, there was a period of time where I told my family, I'm like, look, I'll move back to California as soon as possible. I told them, like, let me go there for 2 years to get some work experience and I'll come back. And they always, like, joke about it now. They still go, oh, Doug, 2 years, huh? I'm like, yeah, sorry.
Yeah.
But, you know, we actually tried to move back a couple times. We were looking at the opportunity and things just fell through like it wasn't meant to be, you know?
Yeah.
Like buying a house, and the house that we were buying didn't appraise because they did a expansion on the house that wasn't done up to code, so it didn't appraise. And it was like all these signs that were telling us to just stay in Texas, right? So we stayed. But, you know, another big transition point before, when I was trying to move back to California for a little bit, there was I was in an engineering role. But it was a niche engineering role. There was maybe like 10 of these specific engineering roles in the company, and this is a company with like, I don't know, 50,000 employees or whatever.
Yeah.
There was like so few of this opportunity. So I was like, well, what are there a lot of? I'm like, well, there's a lot of salespeople. There's 30,000 salespeople at Cisco at the time. I'm like, if I transition to sales, like, it'd be so easy to just get another job back home. So I was trying to make this transition, and I remember this one was kind of interesting. Cisco had just acquired a company called Tamberg, and what Tamberg did was just video conferencing. And Cisco was big on, like, they had WebEx, which was like, you know, meetings and all that type of stuff. What everyone thinks is Zoom now, which is where I'm at now, right? But it was like that. It was you know,
Zoom before there was Zoom.
Yeah, exactly. It was telephones, like
that was those big, huge things that sat in the middle of the conference table.
Yeah,
and stuff.
exactly. Like
you had to have the projectors and everything. Yeah, I know exactly what you're talking about.
All that stuff. So, you know, what was interesting was I remember there was a time where I wanted this job as a collaboration specialist, which is like voice and video and meetings and contact center and all these different technologies. But Cisco just acquired this company called Tamberg, and all they did was video conferencing. And this role came up, and they're like, yeah, we want you to go for this video specialist role. And at the time, as the engineer in me was kind of like, voice and video, it's kind of all the same if you look at how like the data flows, and like if you're like go like to the nuts and bolts of how it works, there's a lot of similarities, right? To a certain extent. So I was like, man, this job, if I take it though, they're going to disband this whole team, eventually the video specialists, and they're just going to have these guys that focus on the broader portfolio cover it. And I'm like, screw it. I don't have anything to lose. I'll go for that, and I'll show them I'm so good at the broader portfolio that when the time comes and they disband this team, they'll move me to the other one. Sure enough, 6 months into that role, I took the job. 6 months into the role, they got rid of that team. And they're like, hey, you're good at this other stuff. And they moved me to the other one. But like every turning point in my career was like pressure makes diamonds. Like just go bet on yourself. Take the, just believe. And I made that transition again.
Yeah.
Right? And so it's crazy. I mean, take risks if you can. Do it before you have kids.
Yeah, right.
But yeah, so anyway, I ended up leaving Cisco. And you talk about like life-changing moments. Like let's talk about COVID.
Yeah.
And the impact it had on everyone, right? So October of 2009, my wife, we knew that her role within Cisco was going to go away. Like we saw it coming.
Okay.
And she was kind of like, I want to go focus on, she runs like a healthcare blog, like a blog that focuses on like clean living and health coaching and all this stuff. She's like, I kind of want to go focus on that. I'm like, well, you moved halfway across the country for me to do what I want to do. It's my turn to let you focus on you.
Yeah.
Right. So she left. She actually got let go of Cisco in like October or November 2009, right before COVID. And then I'd made some real estate investments, about the garage and stuff like that. I was like, I want less overhead. So I paid off some of these, investments I made in cash. So I took my like reserve savings. I'm like, I'm going to pay this off because I just want less bills. So I feel less stressed. And at the time I'm a VP of sales at a technology reseller. And this company's whole idea was like, we're going to weather the storm. We're not going to let people go. We're going to weather the storm better than everyone else. So when they're scrambling to hire people back when things come back, we'll be fully staffed. But I was paid on the profitability of the company. So they were not letting go of people at all. And ultimately, you can only hold on for so long. So profits start going down. I took a 60% pay hit right after I paid off these big real estate investments with my reserve funds, right after my wife left her corporate job. And I was in a bind, man, but pressure makes diamonds. And that's what caused me to create my business that's kind of a big focus of where I'm at now.
Right on. So with those things considered, would you have done any of it differently? Or is that what led to where you're at now? Like, I mean, did those moves all paying out? Like, I mean, I know at the time it couldn't look. 2019 when COVID started happening, like everything looked like it was just going in the shitter. And, that's got to be a tremendous amount of stress with young kids at home, all the stuff you just said.
Yeah.
And then you consolidate that. And I mean, you'd put yourself in a position where, you were pretty financially stable.
Right.
And had those reserves and stuff like that. But then you deplete them to kind of take care of some other investments and stuff. And investments aren't doing anything either at the time. So,
yeah, like looking at it now, everything worked out. So I got lucky.
Yeah.
But it worked out in different ways than I would have thought, right? Like all of that transition caused me to go start my own business, right? And ultimately my wife was helping, kind of overseeing some of the elements of that, right?
Yeah.
But, while I was still there, pressure makes diamonds. It pushed me to kind of keep going and get after it. But no, I wouldn't. I mean, one thing I wouldn't have done is like, I wouldn't have paid off a commercial real estate loan.
At those interest rates, you're like, that payment probably would have been all right for a while.
I wouldn't have paid off certain loans. It's like, people talk about debt like it's a bad thing. It's not. Like, it's really, and when I mean debt, I mean liabilities. Like things that you have payments on.
Yeah.
I don't mean like, oh my gosh, I'm over my head in credit card debt. I mean like, you buy a house, if you own a home, you have debt until your house is paid off.
Right.
Right? Like, you might be cash positive at the end of the day if you sell the house, But if you don't sell the house, those are liabilities. Right?
Yeah.
So, it was interesting, but like there were years and years where opportunities were coming past me, and I just never thought about monetizing any of them until I needed to. COVID hit, and pressure makes diamonds. So a perfect example, when all that stuff happened, I took a 60% pay hit. I took my excess capital, paid off, real estate investments, and my wife left her job. What ended up happening was, I remember someone came to me and they're like, I was working in the tech space. It was a CIO, so it's the highest ranking person in a technology company. It's the chief information officer, the chief technology officer. This person came to me and said, Doug, I need a VP of IT. Do you know anyone? And out of nowhere, it just kind of hit me. I go, do you have a recruiting budget? Yeah, we got a recruiting budget. Okay, let me send you over my search services contract, and I'll help you find someone. Sure thing, sounds good, Doug. So, what I did is like, not putting too much out there, but like one of our good friends, like Miguel, works in recruiting.
Yeah.
And I go, Miguel, like I want to structure a contract for recruiting people, and I know this is your expertise because he works in that industry.
Yeah.
And so he helped advise me on like, okay, well, here's what you would need to do, and here's how you need to do that. And he, of course, he's very above board. He didn't do anything to jeopardize anything that he does, right?
Yeah.
But he's like, he's giving me industry perspective.
Yeah.
Right? And then I'm like, okay, I'm going to place this person in this job, and now I'm getting referring someone that's already in my network because he worked at a previous client of mine. I refer him to the CIO, but now I get 20% of their first year salary. Like, oh, this is a viable thing. And I've been walking away, I've been doing this for years and years. They call other people that work in technology and they go, do you know someone that does this? Do you know someone that does that? And I never thought to ask a simple question. Do you have a budget for recruiting?
Yeah.
Yeah, we do. And it doesn't matter what company it is. It could be a manufacturer. People have budgets for recruiting for everything. I just never monetize my network. And it goes back to exactly the same thing. I went back to the days of the Too Short and all these things where I was like, oh, yeah, let me introduce you, whatever. I went back to where I started and said, I will introduce you to this person, and I'm going to monetize it.
Yeah.
And so I built that, and then now people just want more and more services. Like, hey, can you do this? Can you do that? And then that's what prompted us to build out a full-blown technology consulting firm and resell firm. And that thing's going gangbusters.
That's awesome, man. I'm happy for you.
Yeah.
That's awesome to hear. What let's talk about, I saw something interesting that when I was reading up on you a little bit here. I tried to call some of our good friends and get some really good Dougie Fresh stories, but you have way too much dirt on these fools in your network of people.
My NDAs are amazing.
Yeah, I'm telling you, they're stout, because I was trying to get good funny stories. I was like, because we messed with Miggy that night about the Jane Fonda pants, and man, I hadn't laughed that hard in I don't know how long, but. I was trying to find a good little one like that, and man, they were all lips sealed, man. They're like, nope, nothing on Dougie.
You know how much more I appreciate my friends and all these people that they know how to hey. Yeah,
they know. They're like, oh no, I'm not.
Street code stuff.
Yeah, street code was intact, hardcore. I was like, I got to work you out something. I just need something little, just a good one, a one word I could say that's just gonna throw them off a little bit. Like, how the hell do you know that? Yeah, it didn't happen. And you're pretty good at your web stuff too, because I was Google searching and doing all this stuff. I was like, all right, there's got to be a good, interesting story here somewhere. But yeah,
as a guy that talks about protecting his brand, I went out of my way to make sure everyth's very clean and legit.
Yeah, I'm sure, man. You have to today's world. One little thing goes out online, and it can be a mess for some people. And that's kind of the atmosphere we create. I'm joking with you about this, but I think that's why we get some of the guests we get on here, because it's a laid back atmosphere where we're just going to sit here and have a drink, talk about our lives and how we've gotten to where we've gotten, and what we do and how we think about things, and sharing that for others to learn from. But yet, it's not like, even if there was some story, it's like, I'm not TMZ. I'm not sitting here trying to like dig up, some bullshit
like,
and
gotcha,
get y'all, gotcha. Camera. So, I mean, I think that helps a lot with this stuff. Like,
So I have a question, and it's personal and relatable, because have you ever gotten to the point to where, with all of the knowledge, everything you've done, have you ever hit that wall to be like, what can I do next? Because it seems like you can predicate stuff. You see it coming, so you always get ahead of it. But have you ever got because personally, literally, I'm looking at a mirror, but I'm at a point in my life where I'm stuck. I still don't know what I want to be when I grow up, because I can do so many things. And so you get spread thin because you're trying to do exactly. I don't know. I do a million things, but accomplish nothing. And I'm really looking for that one or two things that I can take all my talent and pour it into. But the problem is, it's kind of like already been done, or it's become easy for others to do. So my value isn't as big as it used to be.
Right.
So have you ever gotten to that point to where you're like, with everything, because it seems like you always make lemonade. You get a bunch of lemons and you find a way to make the lemonade. I don't even have a pitcher to put it in. So I'm listening to you and I'm like, man, you always find a way to connect something with, even if it's a little bit of what you do, you still find a way to make it big.
It tells a cool story when I'm sitting here talking about it, and we're talking about the truncated versions of all this stuff. But absolutely, man, I hit a wall a million times, and you sit there over and over again trying to figure out, like, how do I cross this chasm? How do I get past this hurdle? And it's in this interview, it might be like, oh, Doug had an idea or something that helped him cross it overnight. But no, it was a struggle over and over again, many times. And, again, that's where I think it comes down to your network.
Grit.
Huh?
The grit.
Exactly. The grit.
That's got to be chapter 1 in your book. That's where I was going next. So.
Yeah, exactly. But it's about, everyone's going to hit that wall. And I still feel like I hit that wall, right? And even when it's successful, it's like, you create a business and now you're sitting here butting your head and like the business is successful and things are going gangbusters, but I still have a corporate job, right? And it's like, okay, I'm at that transition, that crossroads right now, right? Where it's like, I have a really good corporate job and I love my corporate job and I love the company I work at and the people that I work with, and it's a great opportunity. But yeah, I'm hitting this crossroads where it's like, your other business is going well. Is it time to just bet on yourself once again?
Leap of faith.
Is now the time.
Yeah.
And the problem is, in what I feel genuinely, is that it was a lot easier earlier than it is now. Because earlier I didn't have anything to lose. I was working graveyard hours and I didn't have things. I didn't have a home. I didn't have kids. I didn't have a wife. It was really easy to just put it all on the line when you don't have anything to lose. And you get to a point where it's like, and it's all relative, right? It doesn't mean it's not about money. It's not about any of these things. It's like, you can have things to lose, right? And now I'm at this point where it's like, okay, I got things to lose. Is this the right time to bet on myself again? Or am I just jeopardizing my family by doing that and all these things, right?
Yeah.
So
the bar keeps getting raised.
The bar keeps getting raised, and it's not, it's not just a financial bar. It's an emotional bar, a time bar. Does this take away from my ability,
to be a dad?
To be a dad, the biggest thing I look at is if I'm able to make this transition from the corporate world to just focusing on this business full time, which I feel is very near term for me. I can see it right now. But the biggest thing, I don't dream about what I could buy or what I can get. I dream about oh my gosh, I get my calendar back, and then now those days where you take your kid to school and go on the field trip, I can participate in that and I can do these things. That's what I am dreaming about. So I just want to make sure I make it clear that it's not just like California. It's not all palm trees and sunshine.
Gotcha.
You know what I mean? We'll talk more.
So is this kind of where is this where your book's going? Because I mean, I did find you were writing a book.
I was writing a book. I need to dig back into it, but
How much of it you got done? I mean, chapters? Mm-hmm. Because I've talked about this for a while, and I write here and there, and it's very sporadic, but I've talked about that in different aspects, and it's making the time to do it. I mean, it's kind of how the podcast started, too. Like, I tried blogging for a while, and I could not commit to writing something once a week, and then, like, not overanalyze it and scrap it and whatnot. And then I started doing podcasts with some of these guys I got invited on. I was like,
Man.
well, shit, I can sit and talk and we can do that. But like,
not only that, this could be your book, right? It could be like
Right.
lessons learned from sitting down with a bunch of different people from different walks of life, right?
Exactly.
And like, you know, it's weird. There's like books about everything that like, I mean, like there's a book. Oh my gosh, I'm forgetting the name of it right now. It's gonna drive me nuts. But there's a book about watches. I'm like a watch guy. Which is silly and all these reasons.
Bruh,
But
we gonna talk.
Hey,
We gonna talk.
hey. So there's a book about watches, but it's talking about what the watches. It's what the watches mean to people, right? Culturally, and I'm gonna pull up the name of the book in a minute, but they'll interview people and they'll talk about a watch and what it meant to them and all these things, like whether it was handed down to them or the first time they cleared this thing in their career or all these things, right? And it's just like, this book is literally just a compilation of all these different people's stories about an impactful moment on their life that transcended with the watch, right? Like
That's facts. I had
Bruce
a watch.
Willis's dad kept it in his butt for prisoner of war and carried
go
it
get my
back.
watch.
And-
But you know, with I'm a watch freak. But when it was about fashion in the time, remember when Jacob the jeweler had them big ass gaudy watches? It was all that. And then when somebody turned me on to actual high end watches, and when I learned what it took to make this watch, there's watches that can a mechanical, nothing electric, a mechanical piece of collection of things can keep track of the moon's lunar orbit.
Isn't that crazy?
And I was like,
wild.
So I made a goal. I said, if I achieved a certain thing, I was going to buy my first, not $300 fossil, but an actual watch that costs more than $5,000. And I achieved the goal last year. So that's what I'm wearing
What'd
now.
What'd you pick up?
It's the Tag Carrera ceramic.
I love the Tag Carrera. Yeah,
So
that's
this
great.
is my first real watch, and I wear it's my everyday watch, but it means a lot.
Yes.
I have an Apple Watch that I only wear to the gym or sometimes, but when I say this means so much more, because it wasn't about what it cost, it's about what I did to achieve a goal, and that was
Same
my
thing as
present.
this.
It's
my
a
Mundo.
milestone. What you got?
My Mundo.
Oh,
yeah,
snap.
Mundo. It's the
Yeah.
same thing.
I should have wore a different watch today.
Here you go, one up both of us big time here. I'm just kidding.
no. I mean, like this is it's a
Maybe
roll.
it's like
My
Jacob the
Hublot,
jeweler. I
my
could have brought my
Hublot,
Jacob the
or-
jeweler watch. Me and Naz did a deal back in the day.
It's a Rolex Submariner, and it's a great everyday watch, but it's like it's not the most sentimental watch to me, right? Like to me,
Right.
I'm a sucker for nostalgia. It's all about the story something tells. To me, this is just a watch that it's an amazing watch, and an everyday watch for me. But it doesn't have the most sentiment to me that some other things do, right? So, speaking of that book I was telling you about, Naz is in that book.
Really?
He's talking about his Patek Philippe and what it meant for him when he bought his Patek Philippe and all this stuff, right? So, yeah, they'll have the
We'll
celebrities.
put this in a sub note of the show here. We'll figure
yeah,
this out. Put this
yeah.
on here for y'all.
But no, to me, everything's about nostalgia. Like, you're familiar with my setup at the garage and all
I
that
still
stuff.
haven't seen it other than pictures. The one party you invited me to, I could not attend.
right.
And I was super bummed because I saw all the pictures and the great time that everybody had.
Yeah.
So,
We'll
yeah.
have to, my thing is like I'm a watch collector, I'm a car collector, I'm a pen collector, I'm a whiskey collector, I'm a gun collector. I'm like
he collects a lot of shit, and he has a lot of badass shit. I'm not gonna put him on blast, but
the problem is I'm overly nostalgic, right? So if I look at it like, you know, I have a 1970 Porsche 914-6. And you look at this. This is like one of the smallest Porsches in the world.
He looks like Shaq driving this thing. I saw a picture online of him in it. It literally looks like this Shaq Miata commercial.
Oh, and Miata, like, so it's a mid-engine car. I think a Miata is a mid-engine too, right? So very similar, right? It's like a small Porsche. It's very limited. But the thing was, so my dad had one of these in the 70s, and he was doing some, as we call it, spirited driving, and totaled this thing. Like completely totaled it. They only made 3,000 of this car ever, right? Of this version of this car. Yeah. They made 3,000. He totaled it. And in 2002, he found one on eBay for like $7,200 and bought this thing. And he's like, it was a original VIN matching Porsche 1970 914-6. Bought this thing, and we're going to restore it together to look like his childhood car. And in the process, he ended up passing away, right? And I'm in Texas now. This car is still at a shop in California, and I'm just blindly mailing checks halfway across the country without even being able to look at this car, just hoping that it gets restored to the justice of what he'd want it to be. Yeah. Because I'm nostalgic. I'm like, I want to finish what
you guys started.
What we started, right? It's the same thing. Like, you know, I have two Buick Rivieras, a 1967 and 1969. My kids are 2 years apart. The younger one gets the 1969. The older one gets the 1967. But it's just, everything for me is about nostalgia. Like, you know, and I've had buddies that are like, man, you know that Porsche 914? Like, man, you could sell that and go buy a Lambo. I'm like, yeah, but the Lambo wouldn't mean shit to me.
Yeah. Right? That car's something that will always make you remember your father.
Exactly.
You'll never sell that car. I know you well enough to know you're never selling that car.
Never. It's all about nostalgia, man. It's all about legacy and all this other stuff. And, you know, that's where my head's at.
Yeah, man, that's awesome. I mean, and it's cool to hear that somebody, especially in Dallas, doesn't collect some of these things just to say I have them or just to put them on show. Like, I mean, you're one of the least showy guys that I know that has these things. Like, you know, like you don't flaunt it. You don't put it above other people's heads. You don't, I mean, none of that stuff. Like, it's one of the things I've always liked about you, like, as I've gotten to know you over the last couple of years. Like, like I said at the beginning, like, at first I thought you were completely full of shit. Like, cause you were just like rapping, but you were with your close friends that I just happened to be a part of that group at that time, sitting over lunch. And that was when we were first getting to know each other.
Is the name of your book A Man and His Watch?
That's the book.
My job is to Google, so I Googled it. But A Man and His Watch, that's the book.
A Man and His Watch, it's a great book.
My right hand over here, you know.
Dude, it's my job.
You got to get that book.
Yeah.
So, done.
No, but
knowing that there's more stories behind the things that you do collect, way cooler. Because I'm the same way, you know, we met over bourbon. That's how Doug and I met.
It's amazing how this stuff bonds people.
It's so amazing. And it's like, if you'd have told either of us early in our bourbon journey that we'd both be sitting here drinking what we're drinking today, we would have been like, yeah, that's not my cup of tea. I mean, I'd bet money on it.
That's not Makers and Coke.
Yeah, that's not Crown and Seven. Like, what are you doing? But it does. The experiences you have with people in certain bottles and stuff like that, you know, like, you know, we've got a cognac out here. We've got an Armagnac. We've got an experimental cigar finish.
From 1978.
Yeah, we've got a 1978 Armagnac on here. I mean, we've got the Prisoner over here from Bardstown, which is one of my favorites they've ever released.
Oh my gosh, I love those guys.
I stocked up on that as much as I could. Like, that's one of my favorites for them.
We're definitely going to have to go down the bourbon talk.
Yeah.
What I was going to say, like, just to clear the record because Miguel will be like, "What do you mean Doug's not showy?" He'll give you.
I know. I was checking the comments over here waiting because now that he knows you're on here, I was like, Miguel's gonna be busted
I know
in here.
Miguel will be like, "Yes, he is." But no, there's times where, like, I'll be honest. There's times where I feel like I overcompensate or I'm showy on things. Like I'm humble with enough stuff, and there's times where I could use being more humble. But for me, like, it's all about, we talked about earlier, like learning from an experience in your life or learning from something, right? What I've learned is the times when I overcompensate, if I am overly showy or if I am overly whatever, for me, it's like my dad died 3 months or 4 months after I moved to Texas. Right after I had those 3 jobs, and my wife was working on 2 jobs, and I didn't have anything to my name. And he also wasn't 100% on board with all the stuff I was doing because he knew the people I was hanging around, like, and regardless of, like, oh, you're hanging out with Snoop, but you're kind of a victim of your environment because you end up in situations that sometimes aren't the best. I was in situations I shouldn't have always been in or whatever. So there's times where I feel like I overcompensate with certain things, or I might be a little more showy with something that I should. And it's more like me being like, Dad, look, I made it. I'm okay. Right.
Yeah, I can relate to that so much.
And because I can't hear him saying that to me because he's not here, I turn to my buddies to say it. Right. Like, hey, Doug, oh, good job. Right. Like, so even you just being like, oh, Doug's genuine with these things or whatever, like little things like that. It's like, and it's bad. Like, as a man, it's tough. As a grown man, it's tough to be a guy who's like, oh, words of affirmation matter to me, but realistically they do. Yeah. I don't need people to blow smoke up my ass or any of these things, but it matters to me to the extent of being like, I just hope I'm doing the right thing. I hope I'm living a good life. I hope I'm doing these things. Right? Yeah. Because my dad didn't get to see it.
Yeah.
You see what I'm saying?
I'm right there with you, man. My dad died when I was 24, so just a couple years apart there.
Literally
same
2 or 3 years apart.
Same thing, man. And it was real sudden when he passed. So I mean, I can totally relate to that. I've asked my mom. I remember when I made my first really big check when I knew I had made more money than my dad made in a calendar year. You know, my dad had a good job at the end of his career. I mean, my dad worked for the government. I mean, we had our tough times growing up, but like by the end, he had done something again, you know, and like for him to be able to see what I've done would mean like the absolute world to me. Like, you know, so I mean, I can totally relate to that. Like, that's just one of those things that, like, unless you've lost somebody like that, you don't really understand. But like, to be able to recognize that, I mean, kudos to you, man. Like, that's another one. I mean, it reminded me when you said we had to go down the burn road. I remember the first serious conversation you and I had, and I was actually pissed off at you. I was so mad.
Whoops.
Because this fool lives really close to a Liquor King. And at the time when I was still on good terms with Liquor King, I had been saving up my points like nonstop. And I had my eyes set on one bottle. And
okay, guess what?
My guy, you're going to know in a second. My guy called me and said, hey, man, it's here, and I think you and one other guy have enough points to get this bottle, but you better get here quick. And I got up there, and I see you walking out to your car with the bottle. And I'm like, whoops, this son of a bitch. And then I see you at lunch the next week, and we're sitting there talking, and you're like, yeah, man, I mean, I don't know if I can open this bottle. I'm really torn about it. Part of me wants to flip it. And then I think I'm gonna throw this really cool party at the garage, and I'm just gonna charge everybody like X amount. Everybody's gonna get a glass to commemorate it, and we're gonna drink this together, and we're all gonna share in the experience of this bottle. And then I was like,
now I know what you're talking about.
I was like, this dude is cool. All right, dude. Like, I'm not mad at you anymore. You beat me fair and square. You live like 5 minutes from there. You beat me by like minutes. But yeah, this fool got an OFC bottle with points. And like, even if you had points, this bottle is still very expensive. My wife would have been so pissed off if I'd have bought this bottle.
That's what I thought about at the time.
At this point in time when this happened, my wife would have been absolutely livid with me. So you probably saved my marriage.
Well, and here's
like,
the thing.
you know, that I didn't get that bottle and that you got that bottle. Well, and like, but yeah, I'll never forget that. Like, that's one of my first Doug experiences.
I thought about that too, because I was like, I mean, this was probably, I think it was almost $3,000, right?
Yeah.
And I'm like, if my wife
with points,
yeah,
this is like a $3,000 bottle that you could sell for 10.
Yeah, well, I was like, man, if my wife finds out that
Damn.
We don't want to talk about that. Let's next.
Yeah.
Just
Next subject.
Next
So about
subject.
that bourbon jersey journey, Doug. Where do you want to go with the bourbon journey?
Man, all I was gonna say is I feel like it's interesting. Everyone's got some kind of hobby. It could be sports. It could be, it could be anything that kind of
Cigars,
bourbon, things that connect them to people. And I feel like that the whiskey has a good story around that. Like, I'm bad. Like, I'm not overly involved. There's like all the whiskey clubs and stuff, and I'm not as involved as I should be, and I just don't have the time, to be honest, with most of it. And I have a lot of good friends that look out for me, right? Like, I got buddies that are doing like people like Miguel and Blake and all these guys that, like, they put all this blood, sweat, and tears and heart and energy and all this effort into these things, and like, it's so respectable, but I also think, like, there's so many haters out there, so I just I just want to be as far from, like, I've
gotten to that same point, man. Like, at first I was in every damn group and everybody joked and called me Switzerland because I wasn't getting into the politics of any of these groups. And I mean,
it's hard to even explain.
It is, unless you've been involved in it. It's really hard to explain it. But it's like a bunch of teenage girls. Like,
well, people come and it's like, I've had people. It's funny. It's like, people. I don't know how to explain it. This might not be the best forum for it, right? But everyone wants to sit there and think that, you're a part of a whiskey group or a club where there's a million people in these things, right? Mm. And everyone feels like they need to be invited to every single thing. And you're like, man, I don't even know you. I don't even.
And they want you to come to your house. And
they're like, I want to come to your house and drink your $2,000 bottle. I'm like, I don't know you, bro. And like, it's the point where, like, my friends have had to explain that to people before, where it's like, hey, not putting specifics out there. I mean, like, they go and they ask, like, well, how come I didn't get to go to this or whatever? And like, my friends will be like, you don't know Doug like that.
Yeah, you're not in the inner circle, basically. I mean, that's okay. Not to sound shitty either.
No, and that's okay. Like, look, I don't expect, like, if you're having a Friendsgiving at your house, like, dude, like, not everyone's earned the right to come to every Friendsgiving, to everything. If you did that, then it doesn't do justice to certain other people. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Right? Like,
it doesn't put any credit into the relationships you've built either.
It's not genuine.
It's not genuine.
Now you're doing it to check a box because you feel like you're
showboating.
Now you're showboating. You want to, like, so, yeah. No, I completely get it. So I try to not, like, post things.
I'm the same way. I was bad about it early on. Like, I don't show pictures of my bar very often anymore.
It's not bad about it. Like, you're early on, you're passionate about it. You're like, my gosh, I love this whole scene. I want to share it with people.
Yeah.
And then you realize that people are like,
people are still people.
Yeah. And then other people.
But as you mature,
don't like to see people be successful.
You notice less is more.
Yeah, I mean, you have less is
friends
more.
Wise.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Less is more.
But these groups, when you start getting wrapped up in this bourbon culture early on, I mean, and it's changing drastically right now. So you're weeding out a lot of these fake bourbon people and these people that are literally, they show up to all these events, all these drops, and they're trying to participate without contributing. We've talked about this on here a lot.
Several times.
We've talked about this a lot, and I think this applies to a lot of things. And it's something I really try to harp on because I think it's very important. You can participate and not contribute a damn thing. Like, it's real easy to participate. And a lot of these people do that, and they see what others are getting, and they don't understand why they can't have it or they can't get that. But they don't want to put in the time or the work or show the grit to, do those things. And, like you just said, there's guys like Miguel and Blake in the locals I don't want to short anybody else out either. I mean, in any of the other groups, there's a bunch of different groups, and there's a lot of guys doing a lot of really good stuff. Whether it's DFW Whiskey Club, Someone Say Whiskey,
Suburban Dads,
Trinity River.
All these guys are putting
their time and energy into it
for other people.
For other people to do it. And people get jealous and see what they get in return for it, but yet they don't want to do all that work that those guys are doing. They don't just go start their own groups. Some of them do. They try. They fall off pretty quickly. You've seen it happen several times in DFW alone. But, I mean, these people show up and they see that the store owner is giving them allocated bottles, or they're, holding things for them, or they're getting the calls, and it's like, why don't I ever get that? Or why can't I do that? I've been going, I've been buying, I've been doing this and that. But you're participating. You're not contributing.
Well, the other thing, too, is people are focusing on the wrong thing.
Yeah.
They're focusing on what's in it for them opposed to what's in it for everyone, or focusing on the people, right? Like, you're
not helping that store move 1,000 bottles.
No, and at the end of the day, you could build long-term, lasting relationships with people, and it doesn't have to be about getting something. You know what I mean? It's just like good people recognize good people and stuff. And like I've seen the flip side of it too, right? Like to be fair, and like not to put too much out there, but like a good buddy of ours, Richard Greaves, lost his wife. Right?
Yeah,
and he's a good dude. A really good person I met through the bourbon world. But like when I saw the thing
I saw that. I don't know Richard personally, but I saw
and it's terrible. But the thing that I saw was I did see people from that whiskey community, from the bourbon community, rally around him to make sure that he had support in that time. And I was one of those people as well. But I'm not doing it. No one expects something of anyone. It's just like you do the right thing for good people. And so there's for every time there's the people that are doing things for like it's just the weird selfish reasons. Then there's the people that's like you're like, man, it was so great to see these people
pull together
to make sure that a fellow in their community has the support he needs when he's going through a tough time.
Yeah,
and I apologize if I'm putting too much. I apologize to Richard first if I am even just putting this out there by saying that, but I think he would appreciate it more than anyone because he understands in like what I would say is even at his wife's memorial service, like the way that he was able to handle himself and conduct himself and whatever was inspiring to me because I'm like, I don't think I could do what he did. I don't think I could respond the way that he did. I don't think I can act the way that he did. And he'd call it out. He's like, it's because of these other people around me that are holding me up. Right, so it's funny. We're going down a different route now, but what I'm talking about is I've also seen the positive impacts of this, where it's like people in a community, whether it's your coworkers, whether it's your family, whether it's your friends from a shared hobby, people can rally around each other and hold each other up during really tough times. Yeah,
that's kind of where I was going with that, and what I mean by when I say you can, it's one of the aspects of participating and contributing. You don't have to contribute. Like maybe you don't know a lot about bourbon or cigars. We've talked about all these things at length here during the show and multiple shows now, but you have to be able to find a way to, put yourself out there, be involved, and do it for the right reasons, and, get yourself in a situation where you can contribute and participate. And if you're doing it with things you enjoy or you love or you like, that stuff will naturally come about. But there's a lot of people, when you start talking about thousands of people, hundreds of people in each and every one of these groups, there's still that large percentage of it that's just in it for what can I get for me? What can I get in line? But that's
terrible.
Life. Like
it is life.
It's a terrible thing to like.
Any aspect in life, it's the same thing. You just got to be genuine.
Yeah.
Hopefully success is putting more into the world than what you get out of it, And I'm not saying I'm there, right? Like, I got a long journey to go. Like people like Tim who showed up earlier and dropping off this bottle, like I got brothers like that make me second guess, like, am I doing the right thing in certain regards? Because like, you need other people that you see setting a really positive example to push you to do the same thing. Right.
And it's surrounding yourself with those people. And you can
100%.
find that in a lot of these things, in some things like bourbon groups or cigar clubs or, any of those things.
Or even a men's group, church, or whatever it is. I'm not trying to get, I don't want to get political. I don't want to get religious on this.
Yeah.
It's not the forum for it, but there's a million platforms to find people that can build you up.
Yeah.
It could be church, right? It
Yeah.
could be, like we're saying, it could be all these things, but you got to have your eyes open to see it.
It's true. Yeah, and you can go wherever you want with this stuff. Like, we don't have any big sponsors and stuff like that yet, so we still say whatever we want on here.
I like how you said
yeah. We're working on it. We're putting together these packages and stuff. When we come back
next
season 2 after the first of the year, we're going to take a little hiatus here after this episode, and we knocked out 14 episodes starting in September. So, I feel like we've knocked out a few, you're kind of seeing where this journey takes us. And,
I'm going to flip the script on you now.
Okay.
All right. We're talking about transitioning to season 2.
Yeah.
What's in it for common sense? Like, where's it going? Like, because at the end of the day, that's your next episode and all these things. So, like, where's your head at?
Where's my head at? Man, I was not expecting this, man. Yeah, you dropped one on me.
Gotcha.
Man, my head's still kind of where it was when this started. I know I'm not doing enough yet, at least in my mind. I haven't met a lot of the goals that I set for myself with this. I'm a little behind the 8 ball as far as I feel like, getting sponsors and doing stuff like that and making this more of a business, to an extent, but I don't want to lose any of the flexibility and opportunity that we're putting out here, So, like I said, I started off trying to do a blog for a while, and I was just too critical of my own writing. And I just couldn't be consistent with it, and I just kept scrapping things.
That's the tough thing about writing. You type something, you delete it.
I'm very critical of myself, especially when it comes to my writing. I've never felt like I was a good writer, even though I've picked it up off and on, and I journal a little bit here and there, more just to clear my head than anything. But my head, as far as Common Sense the podcast, is I want to get the website done here over the next few weeks while we're in between seasons. And
I know a guy.
Yeah, I know a guy. I know a couple of guys, all kind of jockeying me on that. And the problem with that is too, is I have so many good friends that are really, really good at some of these things, and picking one over the other is something I struggle with as well, and how or which way I'm going to go with some of these things. But
it's not picking one over the other, though.
Yeah, it's not at the end of the day. I have to remind myself of that. When you have such close personal relationships with guys that do these things for a living, meeting Biz has been a blessing in my life. Biz is somebody that yeah, man. I mean, Biz and I can sit and jam on stuff and have just some of the greatest conversations. And
has he been on camera yet this season?
Yeah, we did a whole episode together.
Sure.
Yep.
He's about to pull you out here.
When we get a little more advanced in here, we're gonna try and maybe do like the multi-camera things and stuff like that. I mean, all these things are things we have planned.
Because he seems like an entrepreneur too.
Yeah, Biz is very much an entrepreneur.
When I say I wasn't bullshitting, I'm inviting you to lunch whenever your schedule can take it, and we'll talk.
Let's make it
but
seriously.
As far as what I want to see with this show is, I want to continue to bring the type of guests on that I've brought on all year long. This started out with me sharing spirits with cigar friends to learn about cigars and something I enjoyed. And I was having all these great sit down and conversations, just sharing a stick, hanging out with friends. And I felt like people, don't always want to sit down and read a whole book. And sometimes, I listen to podcasts. I go through periods where I'll turn the radio off and all I do is listen to podcasts while I'm driving to and from work, working out, whatever. And I learned so much in hearing these genuine conversations. And I was just getting privy to having conversations with people that I was like, man, I feel like a lot of other people could really gain a perspective, a knowledge, an idea something from having this conversation and putting it out there. And so I just did it. I mean, I came up with a plan, I did it, and I've tried to keep it open so that it can organically grow into whatever it will eventually grow into. But yeah, it's kind of turned into like almost like my little book of, you know, sitting down and having interviews with people. And I don't even like to call them interviews, but I mean, it kind of is an interview, but it's just a genuine conversation where we talk about what's going on in our lives, what's gotten us here, what were the pitfalls, you know, like what walls do we run into, you know, like what were some of our biggest failures, like, because you have to be able to get past a lot of those things to have any of the good things. Like there's going to be 1,000 failures before there's one really good success, you know, like.
Yeah. You don't get there without trying.
Yeah. And you just got to keep doing things, you know, and I've gotten to a point in my career where I have a really good job. You know, my day job is a great job. I work with great people. I've been doing it for 15 years next September, same company. But
they must like you.
Yeah, I guess they kind of like me, you know. So, you know, there's come challenges with that too, of, you know, getting stagnant and feeling like you're not contributing enough, or that you're not, you know, pushing as hard or as far, or, you know, achieving things that you want to achieve, or that, you know, maybe you feel kind of capped and there's other things. Like I'm wanting to add some other investments, adventures, relationships to my life, and I felt like this was the best way to do it. So, you know,
Absolutely.
This is the road I've chosen, and I think that we're just going to continue as planned for right now, you know, jump into season 2, and I've already got, you know, 3 or 4 guests lined up right after the start of the year. We're going to have a weird little break. Like we're going to come back for like 2, maybe 3 weeks, and then I'm going to be gone for 2 weeks. So I'm going to be traveling. Can go see my little brother in Hawaii.
I love it.
But yeah, that's kind of where I'm at, man.
We can always broadcast. All this shit travels. We can broadcast from Hawaii. I'm just,
hey, let's go.
Just saying.
Biz apparently has some sponsors already lined up for us.
Yeah, we're not going to disclose those due to non-disclosure agreements.
American Express and Visa. I got them in my wallet sponsors.
American Airlines.
You know what's funny when you're talking about just talking, like interviewing people, having genuine conversations, etc. That was probably, if I can leave this with anything, like one of the best things I did in my career was just genuinely reach out to a bunch of people. So that time when I was trying to transition from engineering role to a role that's more focused on like sales and some of these other things, I remember I'm like, there's so many jobs out there, and the problem is that there's not enough guidance in the world to be like, well, you can go this route, or you can go that route, or you can do this, right? Like you're just sitting there kind of having to find your own way and find your own destiny.
And what you're passionate about. Like that's what I've always struggled with, is like I can be good at something and not be passionate about it.
Yeah, so for me, the thing that helped me at that point in time was being comfortable with having the hard conversations. So I went, and I remember taking all these different people out to lunch on my own dollar when I didn't have a lot of dollars. And I'm taking account managers and product sales specialists and consulting systems engineers and, you know, technical marketing managers and product managers. And this is all technology.
It's your industry.
Whatever, my industry, right? But I went and I took all these different people out from different career paths on my own dollar. I said, I want to take you to lunch to pick your brain. And I'd go to lunch with them and I'd say, I'm exploring career transitions. I just want to learn more about your role. What do you like about it? What do you dislike about it? What's the compensation like? What are the work hours like? What's the quality of life like? What's the flexibility like? What's the stability like? All these different things. And I had all these tough conversations to help me figure out what's next. But it started with being comfortable with having the tough conversations.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And it's not like I'm asking people to go, tell me what you're paid or tell me these things, but it's about, you know, understanding just genuinely, I'm trying to navigate career decisions. Can we evaluate this? So all I'm saying is I commend that, because you get the same thing from all these different conversations and interviews, right? Like,
yeah.
Just feeling people out, understanding
Yeah, what is
Understand
it?
the
What
world.
makes them tick? What did they do? You know, how did they get there? What decisions did they make along the way? You know, what pitfalls did they hit? You know, I mean, this is what I do sitting in the lounge. So it was really easy to just, you know, for whatever reason, throw 2 mics in here and, you know, let's go 3 mics. Let's, you know, whatever we can do here and just come up with a plan. I mean, biggest thing for me early on was just doing it. Like, I mean, after I did the 2 episodes or so with Brandon and the Frakes and was on those shows,
The Frakes are awesome.
they're so awesome. And, you know,
so awesome.
and they were so inspiring and encouraging too, you know, and then like Brandon's like, all right, you need to talk to Biz. And then Biz and I started talking. I was like, all right. And Biz is like, yo, come up with a plan. We'll make it work. And like a week later,
their podcast is dope too.
yeah, and like a week later, I came back to Biz and I was like, "Yo, this is what I want to do. This is what I'm gonna do. Here's the dates. Let's start planning for this." He's like, "Damn, all right, you weren't playing around. Like, all right, like this is what we're gonna do." I was like, "All right." So we just, you know, kept moving that ball forward, just gradually and doing that. And it's like. There's another one. I'll go ahead and throw it out here a little bit for any of you that are watching on here. We're looking at something that I'm exploring some options. I have an ultimate goal of bringing something back in the music world and making that something real and here again in DFW. We're trying to put together, and there might be a way to tie it in with a podcast and, you know, pull that all back together. I think I have enough people in the circle now that know enough about the different parts of what it would take to do that.
Yeah.
That now it's more like you said, I've got to have some of those meetings, have some of those tough conversations, and start seeing what we can do to make that actually happen.
I love it.
It's yeah, I think it's something that people would really, our generation would definitely dig because it's bringing something back that was very nostalgic for all of us.
Hey.
And, you know, I think that's a good place to leave it at for that, you know, right now without giving away too much.
Sounds like there's a lot more coming. Sounds exciting.
I mean, there's some stuff in the works, you know. We're going to go check out a venue here over the next couple weeks. See if it's the right venue to start growing this and go from there. You know, Biz and I we're treating this more like, you know, at first it was kind of like, okay, this is something fun. I'm just pouring my own money into doing this and it's something I like doing. And now it's kind of going like, okay, there's a path here. There's things we can do with this. It needs to be monetized a little bit, you know, like, I mean, I just can't forever be shilling out money to do this, but you know, like monetize it a little bit, you know, and do those things.
So what you're saying is it starts with betting on yourself.
Yeah, it does. And I bet on myself, and now I'm seeing what it's doing, and you know, we got to take it to that next step. So, you know, Biz and I got to have some meetings over the next few weeks. And
so the one thing, and you can relate to this through years of relationships, because that's right. But Garrett has the one thing that makes it all work for me, because in your journeys, both of you, have you ever rented a whole bunch of I'm gonna do this, and then
I'm fixing to, I'm finna
yes,
to,
I'm finna
I'm
to.
gonna.
Yeah.
He has what I call executionable energy.
Yeah.
He said it, he came with it, he said, let's go.
You know,
I have no choice but to get on board and let's rock.
You know how hard it is to find that?
It's
because everyone wants to talk about what they think they could do or whatever, but no one wants to just go do it.
My wife, when we lived in Omaha, she said, I'm so sick of you coming home talking about all these ideas and everybody says they're going to do something and I never hear anything else about it. It never happens. It never executes. It never comes to light.
Yeah.
Since we moved here, everything I've said, something's going on, something popping, she's like, oh, okay, cool. Tell me when, tell me where. Because she believes it's going to happen.
You set it out in the universe, right? Like sometimes you just got to put it out there and then it's going to happen, you know?
Yeah, you know, and I did that. You know, it's funny. I made a list. I did this about episode 2, I think. I made a list of all the guests I didn't think I could get. Like the 10 people that if this got to where I want it, that I'd want to sit down with and like just start going with. So like season 2, I'm going to get at least 2 of those people on the show.
That's huge, man. Huge.
That's my goal next year, is to get like 2 of those people on the show. You know, and I'm talking like I'm talking like big swinging, like I'm talking like Joe Rogan, like Jocko, like Groggins, like
you know what my goal is to be? One of those big swinging guys.
Yeah, exactly.
My goal is to hit the next tier of the list where I got to come back.
Yeah, you're coming back for sure, man. This has been a blast sitting down chopping up with you. And in all honesty, like you and I know each other, but we don't know each other like well. Like, you know, like we've broke bread together several times. We've hung out a lot of times, but
that's how it all starts.
Yeah, it's where it all starts. And, you know, doing those things and putting yourself in these situations, I believe, is like the best thing anybody can do for themselves, especially when you're trying to figure out that next step or what door might open or what might be out there. You know, who knows? Excuse me. You could have said something today that, you know, resonated with somebody that somebody was on the fence about, or, you know, maybe, you know, any of us sitting in this room could have said. So, you know, to me, that's what it's all about, man.
I love it. I love it, man.
All right, man. Well, we're getting towards the end of the show here, and I've got to ask you a couple questions.
Okay. Oh, shoot.
So now I get to flip it back.
Right.
Now I get to flip it back on you since you got me
earlier. Here's the fun part.
Okay.
Yeah, these are fun. So remember, you can say whatever you want to say, like whatever comes to mind, whatever on your heart, whatever. You can go in any direction with this. Like everybody's gone in. I mean, I don't know, Biz. What would you say at this point? Like, everybody's gone in similar directions, but they've all been completely different. And like,
I think Doug is going to hit it different.
Yeah, I think Doug's going to hit it differently too.
I think he's going to hit it different.
Yeah,
because of the way the conversations have been, it's always been kind of like that,
a step off of it, but still in the realm.
I think Doug will hit it different. But let's see. We won't know unless you ask.
Fingers crossed.
All right, so we ask every guest.
It's not a test. This is literally
to give us their 2 cents. And this can be your 2 cents about anything. It can be something that this show's inspired, that's maybe you've thought about while we've been sitting here talking. It could be something you thought you wanted to say that you didn't get a chance to say. It could be advice. It could be a life lesson. I mean, it literally can be anything, but give us your 2 cents on whatever it is Doug wants to give us 2 cents on.
My 2 cents on the first thing, you know what I'm going to say. I'll say it at the same time. There's one word. 1, 2, 3.
Grit.
Exactly, grit. What I'm going to say is, so there's a lady by the name of Angela Duckworth who talks about the notion of grit. And the idea is that people with a high EQ will always, which is emotional intelligence, and that's, if you guys aren't familiar with emotional intelligence, it's a whole nother thing. Like, go read that. There's books about it.
Yeah.
It's basically about, can you be self-aware of how other things that are going on make you feel, and can you be aware of how the things that you say make other people feel, and all these other different types. But the idea is that people with a high EQ, emotional intelligence, will always outperform people with a high IQ. So you can be very intellectually smart, but someone with a high level of grit will typically outperform that person with a high level of IQ, right? So what I'd say is my 2 cents, first of all, is that grit, perseverance of effort without loss of enthusiasm, if you can master that trait, will lead to success. It doesn't matter what vertical you're in. It doesn't matter what you do for work. It doesn't matter anything in life, right? You could be having trouble with your wife and struggling with this, that, or whatever. But if you continue to persevere and put the same level of energy into that, regardless of what's going on, people with the high EQ will always perform people without a high IQ. So what I say is grit. I'm going back to it. That's like the biggest thing for me, period, right? Is just continue to persevere and all that stuff. The second thing, my second cent, would be it's a very similar theme to what we've already been talking about, is bet on yourself, right? Because none of us can get there. Like, if we're not afraid to, we all know what our capacity is to a certain extent, right? We all know what we're capable of, but if we are afraid to pursue these things, and if we're afraid to believe in ourselves and bet on ourselves, we're not going to see the maximum level of success. So my 2 cents are, have grit, perseverance of effort without loss of enthusiasm, and bet on yourself. Those are my 2 things.
All right. Now, this is where I'm going to flip it on you a little more.
Oh,
you
man.
can't use
Damn.
either of those two things.
Okay.
So you can't go to those two wheelhouses. If you could only leave your children with one other piece of advice, and it was the last piece of advice you could give them right now, what would that piece of advice be?
It's gonna sound cliche because people tease me and they go, "Doug, you sound like." I get these like comparisons to like Doug and Vin Diesel.
Miggy, jump in.
I don't get it. No, I don't get it. Doug Vin Diesel kind of thing. I don't know.
It's just a shaved head thing, man.
Yeah,
it's the shaved head thing, man. That's all it is.
It's the shaved head thing or whatever. But what I will say, and it kind of goes
maybe when you rock the wife beater on the Harley, like that
Exactly.
might be. Oh, we can't call it that anymore. I forget. My bad.
They canceled that too?
Yeah, they canceled that too. I forget what it's called now, but yeah.
I don't know what else to call it.
Oof.
I don't either, but
Undershirt. But anyway.
Yeah. What I go back there, if I had to give my kids some advice or something like that, it'd be about family over everything. And I'm not saying that because I feel like I'm the best at it. I feel like, if anything, this is the part of my life where I need to focus the most energy on. That's
Yeah.
the thing that fuels me to want to bet on myself and pursue these side passions and all these things so I can have a path where I can spend more time with my family. But that's all it is, right? Like,
yeah,
you
it's
know,
time. It's your
it's
number one
time.
asset.
It's time and energy. That's all we got, right? Time and energy. So even grit, the whole notion of grit, and you told me not to mention it, I'm mentioning it. But it's all
I
about.
just said you couldn't use that as
Oh,
your wheelhouse.
Yeah, I can't use it, but it's all about energy and the energy you put out there. And my 2 cents or my thought on that is that it's about family, because it doesn't take all these things to build your kids up, right? Our legacy is what we put into our family and what we put into our kids, right? And
Yeah.
I need to put more into my family. I'm not saying I don't, but I'm saying, like, if I were going to say what's an area that I should focus on or double down on, it's family.
It's your number one priority.
That's my number one priority, is like, how do I get more time with my kids? How do I get out of the corporate grind so I can spend more time with my kids and all these other things, and my, not just my kids, my wife, right?
Yeah.
Like, cherish my wife and all these things. We butt heads like everyone else, right? Just because we butt heads doesn't mean that she doesn't deserve all my energy and focus and attention, right?
Yeah.
So that would be what I'd say, is that, cliche, but
Hey, it
is
still
what it is.
It's a fact, though. It's truth. It's honesty.
I don't know how that ranks to what other people say in that
No,
regard.
man, it's right up there, man. Like, I mean, it's perfect. I mean, like, it's a beautiful way to say it, man. And, there's commonalities between every one of these things that everybody's seen on here. And, that's one of the things I got to do in this off time, too, is put some of these clips together and pull these little shorts out and stuff like that.
You write your own book.
To do that, yeah, write my own book. Yeah, it's all going to be video. Like, haven't figured out how to do this yet. Like, video catalog book. Put it in the metaverse or something.
I bet Biz can write a book. I bet he can figure it. He'd be like,
man, Biz write damn dictionary.
he created a dictionary. You know what I mean?
Stores.
Yeah.
For
You remember those
shizzle.
encyclopedias you had when you were a kid? Those volumes, man? That'd be
The
Biz over there,
almond-
man. Every time we sit down and talk. But hey, man, we got to wrap this up. I want to thank you from the bottom of my heart, man. I really appreciate you doing this.
I want to thank you.
Coming
Thank you,
out,
sir.
man. Really appreciate it. I hope everybody's really enjoyed this episode. Thank you for all of you that have stuck with us all year long. And we're going to come back hard and heavy, season 2, right after the first of the year. So that first week of January, expect to see us back. And we might have some new surprises for y'all. We might have a few little twerks up our sleeve, getting it there.
Hey, I like
Doug
it.
may come and twerk. I mean, who knows? Like,
Yeah, I'm gonna have to figure it out. I gotta earn my next spot. I'm working on it.
all right, man. I really appreciate you, brother. Until
Yes, sir.
next time. Yeah, let's not mess that up. But thank you all. Y'all have a very wonderful holiday. And until we see you next time, peace.
Peace. Bye, y'all.